This training video is about the Words Up Early key message face-to-face. We're going to look at why face-to-face is key for early language and communication development and how to use the strategy when interacting with our children. The Words Up Early key message face-to-face is about the position we are in when we are interacting with our children. Being in a face-to-face position helps children to gain more information about interaction and communication than from words alone. So if we think about when we text our friends and family, we've all probably been in a position where we've had a text from a friend or family member where we've thought that the person we're communicating with has been in a bad mood or been cross or upset, and we've got the wrong end of the stick. So when we've spoken to them in person, we've realized that because we've only had the words in the text, we've not had the full meaning or understanding from their message. We lose a lot when we only have the words, because communication is so much more than words alone. Communication involves body language, facial expression, intonation, and all of those things with words make up communication. And words are actually quite a small part of our communication. And we communicate so much more. When we're face to face with children, they're able to pick up on a lot of interaction and communication. So it's really important that we're in that position and they're able to see that. When we interact with children, they're at a lower height already. So even if we're standing talking, and they're standing, they're much shorter than us. If they're playing on the floor, that gap gets even bigger. So it's thinking about how do we get in that face-to-face position so that we can interact with them at their level, and that we're at the same place, and that they're not losing that extra information. So if we think back to if you've watched the Play and Talk Together video training session, you'll have known about how children learn vocabulary and learn language. What we know is that they need all of that information together so that they've got lots of information about learning language and vocabulary. So actually, if they can see information that gives them additional information about learning vocabulary, it helps them to build a picture, helps them to understand the words. So the more information they can get, the better. So if children are watching us and they can see information that adds more information about the words that they're hearing, it will help them to understand that word better and then be able to use that word later on. So when we talk about the key message face-to-face, what we mean is we want adults to be in a position where when they're interacting with the child, you're in a position that the children can look at the adult's face if they want to. So we talk about being face-to-face, but we don't mean that the adults are directly in front of the children all the time. So some children find it difficult to make eye contact. They might find it easier that the adult is side by side, and then they can look at the adult if they want to. We're not saying that children have to look at you if they find this difficult. We're just saying that you're in a position that makes it easy for the children to look at you if they want to, and that you're in that position. So you're not behind the child, you're not towering over them, but you're in that easy position where they can look at you if you want to. It's sometimes tricky though to be in a face-to-face position. So at home or on a one-to-one basis, some of the tricky times can be when the child's really active and they're charging about the room, and they're being that typical toddler and they're going from one thing to another and flitting around, and getting in a face-to-face position then is really hard because you don't want to be some kind of contortionist trying to like run around the room and get your steps in or whatever, running around after them. So some of the things, sometimes it's easier then to be in the center of the room, but at a low level, and use some of those things that we've talked about in some of the other videos that you might have accessed already or are going to access. So things like when we talk about having a quiet time to talk and reducing distractions. So some of that can help to capture children's attention, and then they'll come back to you. Um, and the pausing and waiting, sometimes that can work to bring children back to you when you're in the center of the room, and have created that environment that means children will come back and engage with us if we're down at the right level. Or it might mean that other things that are tricky would be when the children are in a buggy facing away from you, or they're in a high chair at the table and you're cooking at the cooker behind them. So sometimes we just need to have a little think about, can we be creative? And then there are other times when, like obviously if they're in a car seat behind you, you really can't be face to face because you've got to drive your car and you've got to be safe. Um, so there are times when you can't, but there are times when you can be a little bit creative and you can think about ways of being face to face. There are times in an early years setting when you just need to think again about being a little bit creative. So things like story time and group time. If children are all squished in a wee huddle, it's really hard for them all to be face to face. What can help then is sitting the children in almost a semicircle. And so then when you're sitting on the floor at their level, they're all able actually to see you and they're not getting in each other's way. And leaving a space at a table. So if you're doing tabletop activities, if there's a wee space, then you don't have to come behind them to see what they're doing. You can fit yourself in that space and you can see around the table, and they've all got an opportunity to see your face, and you can get face to face with all of them and they can see what you're doing. Other times to think about being face to face, things like when children are first coming into nursery. Sometimes we don't know what kind of a morning they've had, and already before the day started at nursery. So just to greet them when they're coming in, it's really nice to kind of get down face to face and say hello. So bending your knees and getting down to say hello, or and particularly with things like conflict resolution. So it's nice to be down at their level to find out what it is that's gone on. So sometimes if we think about all behavior being around communication, so thinking about why are they doing what they've done, and actually if we can get down on their level to start with, it's often a much better conversation that we have. So yeah, getting down face to face has a really huge benefit at that kind of time. You can pause the video on this slide and click on the link to watch this video clip. Notice how in this video clip mum is sitting in front of the baby and dad is sitting to the side so he can join in too, and they dip their head lower to be face to face and capture baby's attention. This is another video that you can click on the link to. Notice in this video his mum has used the high chair at an angle, so she can turn it, be at an angle too, and try to get in face-to-face position as she prepares dinner, and involves the wee one in preparing dinner too. So to recap, the Words Up Early key message face-to-face is about the adults positioning themselves on the level with their children and in a position where the child can make eye contact with them, can see what they're talking about, and the adults can see what the children's interactions are too. Please watch the other Words Up Early key message training videos. You can also contact the Speech and Language Therapy Department for further advice. And there's a Just Ask inquiry line on a Tuesday afternoon if you have any concerns about child development.